What does your conscience say you should do? You should become who you are. Friedrich Nietzsche says this. And even though Nietzsche proclaimed the death of God, I believe your conscience is divine, potentially God. And I think, from my interpretation, the Bible agrees with this. In the Bible, in I think it's Elijah, who is he's in a cave, I think, and you know it says a big wind came, and God wasn't there, and then a earthquake came, and God wasn't there, but then it says the still steady voice, and God was there. I'm paraphrasing, but I think essentially you get the gist of it with that. So in my opinion, the still steady voice is your conscience. And in Elijah it says God is there. And I believe a lot of other books and people have come to the conclusion that the conscience is divine and potentially God, the universe, whatever it is, it's something powerful. Because the conscience, it tells you stuff you don't want to hear. It tells you what you should do, even though you don't want to do it. It tells you the hard stuff that you've been avoiding, that you don't want to do, but you know you should do. And your conscience yells at you to do these things. And I think it's God trying to get you closer to Him, trying to make you unlock your full potential, become the person you were meant to be, that you can be, if you just put in the work and do the hard things. Do the hard things you know you must do. Now, to listen to one's conscience is very hard. Very hard. Because, like I said, it tells you things you don't want to hear. It tells you to do things that you don't want to do. Which is very interesting if you think about it. Because it comes from your head. At least it seems like it does. And why would something in your head tell you to do something that you don't want to do? It seems very peculiar. And just bear with me and imagine that your true life, the life you were meant to live, the life of an adventure that you were meant to go on, that you were meant to have, can only be had if you listen to your conscience. If you listen to your voice in your head that tells you to, quit your job and travel the world, or go for a different position at your job, or go talk to that girl, or fill in the blank with uncomfortable things that you might not want to do, but something inside of you is telling you that you should. Imagine if you followed that voice. I think each and every one of us, even though the voice is hard to listen to, would live a life of adventure if we actually listened to that voice and didn't suppress it when it tells us to do things that we deem too hard or too uncomfortable or too uncertain. I've been reading this book called The Way of the Superior Man. And in the book, it talks about how purpose, you need to find your purpose. And that's something I've been trying to do for a while. And it talks about getting to the core of your purpose. And it says that there's layers, over the core. And those are little purposes. And you got to get through those layers to get to the center, to get to the core of your purpose. And I think the conscience is trying to get you to the core. The conscience is trying to help you get to the core of your being, the core of your purpose, and why you were put here and what you're made to do. And when you don't listen to your conscience, you stick to the outside layers, you know. And I think this is where people get comfortably numb. You know, your purpose may be this, you know, but your real purpose is here, but you're on an outside layer of your purpose. And you get comfortably numb there. Even though your conscience tells you to do something else, you say, no, this is good enough. You know, I don't want to get uncomfortable again. I don't want to go through what I had to go through at the beginning of this. Because, you know, whenever anyone starts something, they suck. You know, everyone sucks when they first start something. And no one likes sucking. So it's uncomfortable to start new things. But your conscience knows growth there. Excuse me. Your conscience knows growth is there. It knows growth is in discomfort and pushing past your limits and getting outside of your comfort zone, essentially. So it'll try to tell you to leave this comfortably numb area, but you suppress it and you tell it no. And it can be hard sometimes because sometimes it makes no sense. You know, sometimes you can look at the situation rationally and you can say, this does not make sense rationally. But I believe trusting your conscience is rational because you never know how that's going to work out. And I know I can attest to a lot of things happening in my life that I thought were going to hurt me or were harmful to me. But in the long run, they ended up being very beneficial. And looking back, you know, with 2020 vision, being able to see how that all worked out, I think the stuff that happened is actually happened for the best reason and it happened at the best time for that stuff to happen. But when it was happening, I thought it was I thought it was horrible. I thought this was the worst thing that could ever happen. And I think that's what it's like when you trust your conscience sometimes. You know, it seems unrational, it seems stupid, but you know, hindsight's 2020. And when you trust your conscience and you look back on it, you can realize, wow, you know, that was really the best action I could have taken at that time. And I couldn't have known it in the moment, but something deep inside of me knew. And the conscience is trying to put you on an adventure to unlock your potential. All you gotta do is listen to it. Imagine if you didn't fight against it and you just flowed with it. And that was the path to your ideal life, to your fulfillment, to your purpose. But sometimes we let rationality get in the way and say, you know, that makes no sense. And this kind of goes back, well, it does go back to the layers I was talking about. Sometimes you got to just get through a layer, you know, some because you can't just teleport through a layer. You got to get through it. So maybe one of your layers is, say, um, you know, traveling the world. It may have no benefit other than the experience and the journey. But when you're done, it's like unlocking a door and all the other possibilities now are open to you because you made it through that layer. But before doing that layer, you can't before traveling the world, you can't get to the layers closer to your core. Your conscience is trying to help you get to the core and just push through layers. And you're going to have some layers that seem ridiculous and doesn't seem like it's helping you. And It seems like you're actually running away from your problems instead of working on them. But I believe if you truly listen to your conscience, and I mean truly, I personally know the things that my conscience tells me to do. It's clear to me. So I believe everyone else is the same way as well. You can't lie to yourself at the end of the day. You can say, "Oh, my conscience wants me to go out tonight and have a drink." But in reality, if your conscience, if it doesn't actually want you to do that, you can't lie to yourself. You will know. You can't just talk yourself into doing the things you want to do and say your conscience wants you to do it. You truly know the things your conscience wants you to do. And it's helping you break down those layers and get to the center of your purpose. And I think the conscience is very divine, like I said earlier. And even though Friedrich Nietzsche was an atheist, he still knew the conscience was, it may just be who you are. It may just be your identity. It may just be, because it doesn't change. The things it tells you to do change, but it doesn't change. And who you really are is not subject to change. And like I said, Nietzsche says, the title of this video, what does your conscience say you should do? You should become who you are. It is trying to make you who you are. And sometimes that's so hard because humans, we're not built the same way animals are built. The animals have so much instinct. They can basically live off instincts. Some animals don't even take care of their young. But humans have we have a huge, a very long development period, and you don't know how to do a lot of things. You learn how to do a lot of things through your environment and through trial and error. So you could be brought up in your environment in such a way that numbs your true self, and you can become almost unrecognizable when you start listening to your conscience, because the environment you were in brought you up in such a way that had nothing to do with your true self. It had nothing to do with who you really were, and it had nothing to do with what your conscience was telling you to do. And we're social creatures, so when you're growing up, your conscience can be telling you, no, don't do that. But it's hard, especially for young people, to separate themselves from the crowd, from society, because they want to fit in. We are social creatures. you know we have the tribe mentality, and we want to fit in. So when you're younger, it can be even harder to listen to your conscience. But as you get older and realize that your conscience is screaming at you to change, and there's nothing holding you back anymore, then that's a beautiful thing. And that's why I think a lot of people change, and why humans change in general all the time. Animals, their instincts stay the same. Their forms just change, but their instincts, they have their whole life. But humans are different. They have a long development period that can develop them either in a way that gets them closer to their conscience, to who they really are, or gets them further away. And when they get further away, they have a longer distance to travel, which can be daunting and can take a long time. But that's who you are, so you just got to go for it. And you should become who your conscience is telling you to become, because that just may be yourself. Know thyself was written on the temple of Apollo. Socrates loved the question. The ancient Greece, or the ancient Greeks, the Romans, they loved the question, know thyself, because it seems like everyone thinks they know their self, knows who they are, but most people really don't. Most people don't know who they really are. If you ask someone who they are, they'll start spouting off job titles or names, your first name, your last name, your middle name. But these are not you. A name is not who you are. Your body isn't who you are. A job title isn't who you are. They all change, but your conscience, there's something about it. And maybe it's not who you are, because maybe it is God Himself. But it's definitely a compass, if nothing else, to help you know thyself and live the life that you were meant to live. Listen to your conscience. You should become who you are. It is a matter of utmost importance.